Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So, we had some technical issues that we had to create a new link, but I'm glad that we are all here now. I'm pretty sure many more people are going to join us in the meantime, but I think we can get started. Welcome, everyone. This week, we are bringing the topic of the economics of DePIN, cost savings, and return over investment, where we are going to deep dive in all about the financial rewards and incentives of developing and adopting deepin technologies into traditional business models. And for that particular reason, we have very, very, very special guests with us and a lot of powerful topics that we are going to cover. Before we introduce our guests today and we start talking about the economics of deepin, I would just like to give you like a short reminder of everything that's going on at ICN and what we were able to achieve in the past week. Because of course we have some new faces here that we see a lot in our Discord. Because actually last week we started our very successful OG campaign where we were able to overcome the mark of 10,000 OGs in our Discord. So we're very happy to start sharing all about the ICN protocol with you, and this is just one of the many conversations that we are going to have on a weekly basis. But if you want to learn more about what we are doing and all the surprises that we have in store for you, please join our Discord, follow us on X to make sure that we keep an eye on all the different campaigns that we are going to release, such as meme contest, light paper quiz. There is a lot of funny and exciting community rewards in the plan. So welcome to our community, and we cannot wait to just build the future of the open cloud with all of you guys. So now let's hear from our speakers at Hotspotty and Everlabs. So maybe Maria, we can start with you. Can you please introduce yourself, your background, and what you are doing at Everlabs and what you guys stand for?
Yeah, cool. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Well, good afternoon for those in Europe, and good whatever wherever you are. I'm Maria. I'm co-founder and CEO of Weaver Labs. We are a telecommunications startup innovating in the DePIN sector. So we build software to allow telecoms infrastructure to be accessed as a service, such that telecom operators, service providers, and whoever want to leverage telecommunications infrastructure, they can access a variety of infrastructure on demand without having to go and build it themselves, allowing for multiple owners of telco infrastructure. A bit about me, my background is telecoms. I'm a PhD in wireless communications, and Weaver Labs was kind of born outside of the research that I was doing in the innovation lab, but mainly capitalizing on the advantages of softwareization and virtualization of networks to try and solve a commercial problem, which is investment in telecoms infrastructure. So been leading Weaver Labs for about 6 years now, which is a lot for a startup. And my role here is mainly so I kind of wear two main hats. One is operations, delivering customer projects, so networks on customer premise, and designing solutions for them that involve our product sales stack. And on the other hand, also looking at our growth and how can I lead Weaver Labs into becoming the leader in infrastructure sharing software.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm pretty sure we have a lot to learn from you. So thank you so much for accepting our invite. And now, Michael, please introduce yourself, your background, and your role at Hotspotty.
Okay, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Perfect.
Good. Well, first and foremost, thanks for organizing this, Sarah, and Impossible Cloud Network. It's very cool. Happy to be here. Also very happy to be speaking alongside Maria. We recently had Maria on our podcast, the DePIN Hub podcast, and Weaver Labs is very cool, doing very cool stuff. So excited to hear from her as well. But so I'm Michael from Hotspotty. To anybody who doesn't know, Hotspotty We've been around in the DePIN space before it was really called DePIN for about four plus years now. We started out as basically a hotspot management web application for anyone in the Helium ecosystem. And we very quickly became the most popular tool for basically managing Helium deployments within that global community. So today we have over 300,000 users. You can go to app.hotspotty.net and check it out. So it's essentially just a way that you can see how your hotspots are performing, simulate rewards for different installations, manage your payouts to different hosts that might be hosting hotspots. So people are using that to kind of help build out their Helium deployments and scale the network. But now we have our new product, which is our core focus now, which is called DePIN Hub. And that is much more like zoomed out macro view of all of DePIN. And so we basically say DePIN Hub is where DePIN lives. It's the only tab you really need to keep open to keep tabs on the whole industry, right? So you can find token prices, you can discover new projects, you can eventually, we're going to also add a bit of social networking functionality. You can purchase hotspots, you can see token prices and actually trade the tokens, and you can do a lot of due diligence on the projects themselves. So it's kind of like a great place to go to discover new things and then get involved in those projects. So that's what we're doing. We just did a big summit Friday through Sunday. So if you guys want to go to like revolution.deepinhub.io, you can actually check it out. We're going to release the whole thing as a giant masterclass next week. So it's like 30 plus hours of DePIN content. So I was hosting that, so I'm a little bit destroyed. So I'm like recovering from 30 plus hours of emceeing. So if I'm a little bit like sleepy sounding, that's why. But I had some coffee. I'm feeling good, so I'm ready to do this. And oh yeah, and about me, I'm the head of growth at Hotspotty, so I kind of oversee everything commercial and strategic, more around like sales and marketing and go-to-market strategy.
That's fantastic. And thank you so much, Michael, for your energy and still accepting our invites. I'm pretty sure it's not going to hurt or even to be like a struggle for you to be in this X space, because actually really wants to make something more informal and in a format of an open conversation. And that's the reason why I'm keeping an eye on all of the different comments, and we're already having some amazing ones. And for that reason, I don't want to embrace the traditional X spaces where we just talked about generic and philosophical things around DePIN. However, I do like to start with one particular question, because I honestly believe that DePIN, considering that it's such a recent term, right, and is still being developed, I always like to hear from the speakers and the guests what they think about, like, what is DePIN for you, and more particularly for this topic, like DePIN economics. So, in your opinion, how is DePIN like, and what is the relationship with the economic impact on traditional telecom networks? And how can we even explore the cost savings through the technology of DePINs? So this is going to be the most broad question, and then I'm going to focus on Hotspotty and Everlabs. But yeah, I don't know, Maria, if you want to go first and just share with us your main understanding and your perspective on DePIN economics.
Sure. I guess from where we are coming from, the problem that we are trying to solve in telecommunications is an investment problem. So when 5G was kind of like discussed and the world needed to upgrade all the networks into 5G, it was stated that every mobile network operator in the planet had to invest 70% of their revenues in upgrading all of that infrastructure. That is a big cost for such a few players. And the reason that's the case is because of the ownership model, where service delivery is tied to network asset ownership. That means that the companies that provide services also own the infrastructure where these services run over, right? That kind of like limits the growth of the industry in several ways. One is where connectivity is delivered. Because you have to make such a large investment in telecoms infrastructure, then obviously you need to have a return on investment, and then companies are only going to make that investment where they can obtain some commercial value out of it. So there are lots of left behind areas. The other problem that I see with the existing investment model is that it limits innovation in what we call the specialized use cases, such as Internet of Things or ultra low latency, massive number of applications requiring access to the internet that it's not your traditional broadband. So all of that centralized ownership model limits growth. And as we all know, wireless powers the economy, and we obviously need to solve this problem. And that's why Weaver Labs was born as a way to solve this commercial issue. And much as Michael was saying, we were born as well before DePIN was a thing, right? We tried to solve this problem, and we used to call it network of networks, where we allow for service delivery across a variety of network owners, decentralizing the ownership of the network. So what does it mean for cost savings? Everything. What does it mean for operational efficiency? Everything. And what does it mean for us? DePIN is a super important movement. We are really glad that it has finally taken off, and that there are amazing companies doing amazing things across the entire stack, such as yourselves, with the cloud infrastructure, and then obviously all the applications that run on top. So super important movement happening, quite crucial to make sure that the world gets the connectivity that needs, and that we don't leave anyone behind.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's exactly what we think. Michael, do you want to add anything to this? Any comments?
Sure, just real quick. Yeah, I thought what Maria just said, like, it's hitting the nail on the head. I mean, talking about the network infrastructure ownership model as, a major bottleneck and kind of the growth and profitability as well of these telcos. Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's like a perfect segue into DePIN and how DePIN can come and innovate. Like, if you look at, like, DePIN didn't really start with telecom, but it's deeply interconnected, right? You have like the early projects like Filecoin, and then you have Helium, which really is telecom. Like, they're all kind of interconnected to the global telecommunications industry and the need to figure out how to basically connect to, save, store, compute, or build connectivity in a cheaper, faster, decentralized fashion, right? And so if you look at like telecom, I mean, the internet nowadays, like, if you don't have good access to the internet or connectivity, you're kind of screwed. Like, I mean, it's very hard to get a good education. It's hard to stay in touch with people. It's hard to book tickets. It's hard to literally do anything, to be connected to anything. So it's massively important to even survive in the modern world. Like, it's one level below electricity, food, water, all of these basic human necessities, right? So it's super important, and it's crazy to think that over 1/3 of the global population still does not have access to the internet. So, especially when you're looking at like Africa and parts of the developing world, it's really bad. And a big reason for that is because the economics aren't there. It's very, very, very cost intensive for these MNOs and other people involved in the chain to go out and build these networks if they don't think they're going to get the average revenue per user that they need to make it profitable. And so at the end of the day, part of it's greed, part of it's more than just greed, but there's all of these bottlenecks keeping it from proliferating the way that it needs to kind of take away some of this inequality and disparity in the global economy, right? And telecom is like, it's a $2.3 trillion global industry. I mean, it's massive. But if you actually look at like the CAGR, like the compound annual growth rate, it's projected between like 1% to 3% over the next few years, which is actually not that big. It doesn't actually sound that sexy. And part of the reason for that is because it's so capital intensive, and you can't squeeze out that much more economical value from it, because a lot of the places that are uncovered are, again, like these low income areas. And so now where there is opportunity, though, at least in the developing world, is this move into 5G, this move into network densification. So basically having these small cells, which are like almost like little Wi-Fi routers that you need to put everywhere, like absolutely everywhere, because they don't propagate the RF signal very far, because the fact that they are like 5 gigahertz and things like that. So you need a whole bunch of them. And so even though it should be easier, because the big macro sites, like these big, huge cell towers, most of them are already in place. A lot of the fiber's already been laid. It's actually very challenging, because they project in 2028, they're going to need 13 million of these small cells. So the question then becomes, how do you get these onto like all the billboards, into all the hotel rooms, around all the neighborhoods, into all the sports stadiums, and do it in an economical, quick way where you can also maintain it going forward. And this is where the DePIN model starts to show its value. And the same goes for the developing world, where it's very traditionally uneconomical to do so. There's really cool companies like Ycrypt and Daba and Wayru that are all DePIN projects that are finding really innovative ways to use this sort of bottom-up crowdsourced model to actually make it economically feasible to bring connectivity to these areas. So we can touch on all of that later, but yeah, I think what Maria said is exactly it.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. And actually, you touched on a very good point that I would like to raise as the next question. However, I just want to inform the audience that we have here that I'm going to pin all like the best comments. I'm pretty sure you guys are just trying to learn more from the guests, and then you are going to start sharing more and more questions. Please feel free, because as I mentioned, we really just want to have this very informal conversation where we're all learning together and trying to push the boundaries of DePIN and what this represents for the future. So please don't be shy and just leave your comments, express exactly what you think about the space, and we will try to bring these topics into the conversation. But touching on you just mentioned, Michael, I would love to understand more. How does Hotspotty help Helium hotspot owners to optimize their deployments?
Oh wow, okay. After my big long rant, I get to go again. Wow, sorry, Maria. I'll try to keep it short. Well, okay, so Hotspotty. So maybe we need to back up slightly just to make a bit of a segue here. So kind of coming back to what I was saying, so basically, like, yeah, it's difficult to roll out a telecom network. Right now, where the growth is being driven is by these small cells, which you could almost look at as like an extension of a Wi-Fi router that are just put into different places that you can connect to. This can be DAS, which are distributed antenna systems, which you will often see inside of buildings, like basically on the ceiling. If you look closely, you'll see these little devices. You also will see actual small cells, like real small cells, outside on rooftops. They're frequently installed on roofs, and they're just like little mini cell towers, and in all kinds of other places. So basically, Helium has come up with a very innovative way to roll out these small cells, but initially they weren't doing it with actual 5G connectivity. They were doing it solely with IoT, so the Internet of Things, which is a different type of connectivity. So that's machine to machine, and it uses it basically just transfers really small data packets, but it can be very useful for things like monitoring soil levels and precipitation and temperature and all kinds of like machine automations and things like that. So way back in like 2013, Helium started. They were trying to figure out how to roll out this like massive global IoT network in a cheaper, faster way. They couldn't really figure out how to do it. And then around 2018, 19, they stumbled across this idea of like, wait a minute, what if we just got everyone else to do it for us and we paid them in crypto and incentivized them to keep it up and running and connected well by awarding them more crypto? So they launched their token, which is called HNT, the Helium Network token, and it worked. And in 3 years, they built out a global IoT network. It was basically covering the whole world from Brazil, China, US, Europe, you name it. And that was kind of like how Helium took off and became a really popular project. And they sort of are a bit of the poster child of DePIN. So around that time, they were just beginning to expand into Europe. The founders of Hotspotty, Max and Daniel, were very quick to see this trend, and they saw that they thought this probably has legs. So they were able to order a bunch of gateways, a bunch of hotspots, and then they started installing them. So they were like physically climbing on roofs and like being a deployer and actually installing these little antennas on people's houses during COVID, like running around with masks on, like climbing people's roofs. So they were doing that. And at the same time, lots of other people started doing the same thing all over the world. And they realized that the best way to grow the network was to get hosts. It was just to find people like me. So I was one of their first hosts. That's actually kind of how I joined Hotspotty. And my friend Nick, who was the co-host of our event last weekend, we were both hosts. And so they have like all these networks of hosts, and then all these other people around the world have all of these hosts. But the problem is you need to pay them, because the deal is like, I'll put this in my house, but you're going to pay me every month for doing it. Sometimes people are paid in tokens. Sometimes people are paid in cash. It can, be a rev share. It can be many different formats, but you need to have data of how well these gateways are performing. And then also ways to simulate, like if I put a hotspot here, would it be better for the network or worse? Like how would it affect my rewards? How would it affect other people's rewards? And there was just no way to do it. Like people were using spreadsheets. They were like trying to find how to contact one another to like collaborate, but nobody knew how to get a hold of anyone. Like the whole ecosystem was just like chaos because it was so early. So Hotspotty came along and they were like, well, at the time it wasn't Hotspotty, it was just Max and Daniel, and started building their own tooling to do this. And they eventually productized that tooling, and that became Hotspotty. So then they started promoting that to other people in the ecosystem, and very quickly, like people across the whole world started using it. And even today, over 40% of Helium installations are ran through Hotspotty. So what we essentially do is just kind of what I just said. Like it's a software, it's a SaaS product. We have a free version. Most of our users are on the free version. There's also a much more kind of upgraded version that's paid. And with that, you can basically simulate what would happen if you put a hotspot in a certain region. You can also see how much it's earning every day, every month. You can see its uptime, like how many times did it beacon, how many different hotspots witnessed that beacon, because these things affect your rewards, and various other things. And then you can actually manage the payout. So let's just pretend you had like 2,000 hosts, like you're running a really big operation. It's super complicated every month to pay your 2,000 hosts and make sure that you're paying them the right way and the money's actually arriving in their wallet. So with Hotspotty, we created a system where you could literally just scan a QR code, and then all of the hosts that are in your network that are attached to your workspace, as we call it in our app, will just automatically get paid what they're supposed to get paid. Whether it's like 10% of the tokens or like a certain amount in fiat or whatever else, it's done. It takes like 30 seconds. It's super easy, and that's one of the main reasons why we became popular. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what we do and how we help people in the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's very clear. Thank you so much for sharing. And it's actually such a funny story, right? I mean, during COVID, climbing on roofs and just make this happen is really like really shows the excitement, and we are all true believers in this space, right? That we do things that we never imagined to do before. Okay, so thank you so much, Michael, for sharing. So actually, touching here on the comment that was just raised like 16 minutes ago regarding Everlabs. So this one is for you, Maria. And touching on this topic, I mean, I would love to understand, and I believe that the rest of the audience will share the same the same opinion. Is that how does your decentralized infrastructure is going to be different from a traditional telecom network, and how do you plan on innovate and just bringing more DePIN infrastructure to the traditional telecom world?
Um, so, I mean, technically, we don't differ from any traditional telecoms networks, right? A telecommunications network is composed of a radio access network and a core network and a bunch of switches and fiber and equipment in the middle that create a path between sender and receiver. So we don't differ in any way from that. All the traditional components are still there, and we are not changing how infrastructure talks to each other. I guess we base all of our innovation in open networks and open architectures, and software-based networking, which definitely helps in terms of network sharing and infrastructure sharing, which is our key differentiator. However, the way that we change the telecoms industry is by addressing what it's an operational model. We believe that telecom service providers, your traditional, the people you go and you buy SIM cards off, they don't need to go and build the telecoms infrastructure, and that we can have other players that do that. And what we do is with CellStack, it's a traditional orchestration product, and what CellStack does, it's a software that sits on top of the telecoms infrastructure, and it allows for different networks to be integrated, and it also allows to deploy applications, manage application, and create end-to-end services across infrastructure that is owned by different players. So in that way, what we do is we promote infrastructure sharing, which means that you can have more neutral hosts, you can have more public sector building telco infrastructure, you can have venues building telco infrastructure, but they don't really have to do the service delivery. What they can do is put the telco infrastructure to be accessed as a service, and on demand as and when the telco provider needs it. This model is actually not that new. So tower cos do that. They offer the space for the radios to be deployed. They offer to multiple tenants the power and a lot of the infrastructure that is needed to support all the radio equipment. So it's quite important that we understand that sharing telco infrastructure is not something new. It is something that has existed. However, it is not automated and it's definitely not handled in a decentralized way. So the way that we see the traditional telco operational model shifting is towards a model that this is automated, it's done on demand, and it's decentralized. And there is a token that plays a role in the metering and payment of these resources that are consumed. So the way that we see this is kind of like an open marketplace of telecommunications assets where whoever owns these telecoms assets can put them into a platform using SalStack, and these can be then accessed by whoever wants to consume these services and obviously access this infrastructure on demand. So for instance, as Michael was explaining, you have your macro base stations that are all laid out. I don't envision any service provider not deploying their macro base stations because that there's a lot of strategy in terms of how do they design and plan the network in that sense. But when it comes to densification and the access to these small cells, there are companies that are infrastructure providers that they just build these networks to offer them to an anchor tenant or to another tenant, which can be a service provider. So then they can access this infrastructure on demand, very flexible, in and out as and when they need them, or they can rent this infrastructure permanently or with different models. And to be fair, this model, again, is not new. Infrastructure as a service is something that we are all very used to in the cloud, AWS, and all of these big companies do that. There are a ton of DePIN projects that obviously do that as well with individuals and providing compute storage resources into a shared network. So this is not different. The only difference that we see is that we want to bring the industry with us in this journey. We are offering our alternative to this traditional operative model in terms of a B2B kind of strategy. I'm not a big believer on individuals putting radios outside of their window. I mean, Hotspotty offers an amazing platform here to do the traditional network planning and understanding that we're not interfering with each other in terms of spectrum. But it's difficult to kind of like plan high reliable networks with kind of like hotspots in 5G coming in and out. However, neutral hosts can be a solution for it at scale, and we are approaching it more from the perspective of kind of like a B2B software that allows all of this infrastructure to be integrated. So the traditional network is not changed, or we are part of a ton of R&D projects where we do a lot of innovation and research in open architectures. I also sit in the advisory board for the diversification of infrastructure and vendors in the market. So it's an advocate for open networks and open architectures, and that is the change that we are trying to promote. But it's not solely us. This is a movement that exists with Open RAN. Governments are backing it. It's not exclusive of Weaver Labs, but we do offer a massive change into the operational model of the industry. Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing. That all sounds very, very, very exciting. To be honest, that's one of the main reasons we are very happy to be one of your partners. I believe we are going to announce our partnership today, actually. And yes, because we truly believe that you have a lot to offer in this space. And with that in mind, that got me thinking, Maria, if you don't mind sharing, but I was just curious to understand what are the milestones that Everlabs, in your opinion, needs to achieve this year or you have in your plans, and what you consider are like the perfect or the ideal plan for the next 2 to 5 years.
And I always get asked the question of what's your plan? I always say world domination, because that's ideally where we want to get. It's the entire, network of networks leverage using sales stack to offer infrastructure as a service. However, when you ask the question, how do you eat an elephant? Is one bite at a time, right? And that's how we take it. So our initial milestones this year are we have a large number of deployments in venues that we are doing. So we have a very cool project well, most of them are in the UK. So we are deploying in stadiums, venues, and city centers to offer infrastructure on demand. And our key go-to-market strategy here is more on the monetization of telecommunications assets and how can SalesTech offer infrastructure owners additional revenue streams such that this conversation around is it profitable for me to invest in telco infrastructure, it's kind of like answered. It's a no-brainer that you can make money out of telco. It's just that you need to make it easy to onboard use cases and applications. So in the context of stadiums and venues and private networks, we're targeting that specific high density demand customer where you need to provide reliable connectivity to fans and users that come into these venues. So easy way for the user to connect to that network. As well, how can you diversify the revenue streams by offering this infrastructure on demand to others, such that in a stadium you can have broadcasters connecting to this network, the hospitality businesses leveraging the 5G infrastructure and all of that. So that's kind of like where we land. It's a software that allows private networks to monetize and add value to their venues. The next step for us, and I would say that's kind of like the 2-year plan, would be to conquer the neutral host area, where it's more like, okay, so you are already building networks that are going to be used to be rented and you're looking for tenants. Why don't you automate the process and onboard all of these service providers and do some sort of like public private network integration using SalesTech? So that's kind of like where we want to land after we kind of like prove to the market that this model works through a pure private network strategy. And then obviously after that, it's more like, sky's the limit.
Perfect. Thank you. So actually, before we analyze all of these questions from the audience and we just bring like a more joint conversation for Hotspotty, for you, Michael. I mean, you mentioned at the beginning that you guys create this DePIN hub that is actually now the big priority. So actually, can you please elaborate more on your plans for this hub and what exactly do you think like this is so important for all the DePIN or blockchain enthusiasts that really just want to understand more about this decentralized infrastructure world?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. Yeah, and just to touch real quick back on what Maria was saying, I mean, what they're doing at Weaver Labs and with CellStack is so interesting because it's funny because before we pivoted into DePIN Hub, I mean, I guess you could call it a pivot. It wasn't really a pivot. It was just sort of like an expansion, but we were thinking like maybe a year and a half ago about what we really wanted to do beyond Helium. And so we had sort of built this decentralized network planning tool, and we were talking to investors in the space that were pretty deep into telecom. Like, one of our investors is Samsung Next, and Samsung's like one of the big telecom service providers providing hardware and actually doing the installation and maintenance. And so we were kind of thinking like, is there a way we can abstract kind of all of this decentralized wireless radios and data and then provide it sort of as a wholesale offering to different users for like the last mile connectivity piece. and which is essentially kind of a neutral host model. It is sort of like the wholesale side of telecom, which a lot of people don't know about because it's more on the back end. Like you don't really hear about that. This is like behind the scenes of Verizon and Vodafone and all these big companies. And we almost did, but then we decided we didn't want to go that like kind of enterprise and that deep into telecom, and we wanted to stay a little bit more Web3 and crypto. So we saw DePIN taking off, and we decided, no, let's actually focus on DePIN as a space and create like a platform that we thought would just be more fun and a bit like, helping the whole kind of space grow as a whole. But that idea and this neutral host model, and I think this whole concept of cell stack is like super smart and super interesting, and I think it has serious legs. So I hope everybody in the audience is paying attention to that, because what Maria is doing is very cool.
Thank you.
Yes, and I mean it. But coming back to DePIN Hub, so about a year ago, we decided to launch DePINHub.io. So if you're in the crypto space already, like especially DeFi, you might know like DeFi Llama, which is basically like a big data aggregator, where like an information aggregator, where you can find like token prices and different stuff going on with projects. That didn't really exist in DePIN. So we created DePIN Hub as the answer to that. So now you can find, like 200 plus projects on there. You can find all kinds of basic data, like who's the team, what's the problem they're solving, all the links to like the different websites, their Discord, their Twitter. You can look at their social media growth. So like if a project is pre-token, you already can get some alpha and kind of be like, oh, it seems like this project's growing really fast. Maybe it's a good time to get involved. Or if they have a token, you can also just track the token price. But we wanted to make it sort of like your one-stop shop for due diligence. We were originally going to call it actually DePIN DD for due diligence, but we landed on DePIN Hub in the end. So it's kind of like where you can go to discover new projects, but then also do a little bit of research on those projects and decide, like, do you want to buy the token? Do you want to actually start mining? Do you want to get involved in some other way? That's kind of what it is. So it doesn't matter if you're like a retail investor, if you're a builder, if you're a developer, like, you just like a casual person that's looking for a little bit of passive income on the side with like 1 or 2 hotspots in your home. Like, it's for anybody. Also, like institutional investors as well. We get tons of inquiries from VCs, like asking us about projects and deal flow and all of that. So we have our hands like in the middle of it. Like, we're kind of in the middle of everything, because like, we used to be deployers, and then we understand blockchain, and then we build software. But like the team also has like hardware background, they have software background, they have blockchain background, they have firmware background. And then we're also doing a lot of media work. Like we have a 230,000 person newsletter, and we just did a big summit, and we have a podcast. So we're sort of like involved like across the entire value chain of the space. So it just makes sense that we have sort of like a one-stop shop platform for the whole space as a whole, which can kind of serve as your hub just for like keeping track of news. We use a bunch of AI to actually aggregate like all the news in the space, including like Twitter announcements and like Discord announcements and all of this stuff, so that you don't have to track it all down yourself and get like inundated with endless notifications on your phone. And you can just kind of figure out what you want to follow and just follow it in this one place. And sort of give you alpha on like what's going on in the ecosystem and like where opportunities might lie. And what we sort of have coming in store is like one of the main things we've been working on is a reputation score system, because one of the big issues that the DePIN projects have is when they want to start rolling out their networks, they need a community, and they need a high quality community. Like, it's very different than DeFi. Like, they don't want people that are just coming in to like buy a bunch of the token and dump the token. Like, that doesn't do any value to the network. Like, they need people that are in it for the long haul, that actually want to build, that can stick around through like bull and bear cycles. And so what we're doing is basically we have this big database, and so people can connect their wallet, and then we build sort of a profile around these people that basically says, oh, look, they hold like 8 other DePIN tokens. They have 20 hotspots. They've had those hotspots on average with an uptime of like 90+%. Like, these are like top-notch people. And then this is like the next level and the next level. And these people attend like educational conferences and other stuff. So we're going to give them badges for all the educational work they do. And then basically we can help the communities decide, okay, we're going to do our initial airdrop, or we're going to give away our initial like kind of discounts on our miners, or our like whitelist campaign when we release our new miners, to this group of people first, because they're going to have the most impact. And so that way we can kind of be the like middleman in a way that kind of connects the right community to the right projects to ensure that these projects can grow fast and healthily. And so we're working on that now, this whole scoring system, which is something that the DePIN ecosystem just does not really have right now. And we have a ton of projects that are interested in sort of utilizing this to build their community faster. So that's probably for the next year one of our top priorities.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing, Michael. Actually, I use a lot the DePIN Hub for research, and I cannot wait to make sure that ICN is listed there. Of course, we still need to release a couple of documents such as the tokenomics, but once that is done, ICN will be part of the DePIN Hub. And congrats once again for the amazing platform that you put together. It's very, very, very helpful for sure.
Looking
Okay.
forward to seeing you there, Sarah.
Yeah, me too. Me too. There's a couple of question marks that we need to address first. But yeah, so before we wrap up, I just want to have a close look to all the comments that we have here from the audience. I mean, I'm pretty sure we touch on all of the topics. I mean, in a very indirect way, but I mean, for sure, we gave some perspective and some of the questions that were raised. But there is one in particular from Amir that is, how does DePIN compare to centralized systems in terms of hidden costs or unexpected expenses? I don't know who wants to go first and share their inputs on this topic. But yeah, I really think it's a good question. And since it's related to economics, that is the topic of this space, maybe we can just end with that and then just some final remarks. So, Maria, Michael, who wants to go first?
Yeah, I can give a few ideas first on how do I see DePIN addressing that problem, because I do think that DePIN is a solution to some of the hidden costs and unexpected expenses. Um, I'm not going to speak for the end user because I don't understand very well the billing mechanism that exists within mobile networks. I'm not on the customer side. I'm more on the network operation side, and I understand very, very well OSS BSS, which is business and operational systems, and I think where we see the blockchain is in the OSS BSS layer, and it is automating and making in a very transparent way what resources are given and how to pay for those, and make SLA service level agreements very easy to monitor and understand what sort of service am I getting and what should I be paying for. So with computer programs, what you have is granularity, and I think decentralization, the use of smart contracts, the use of consensus can definitely help solve the problem of long-term monolithic contracts that we have, such as roaming, for instance. So there is nothing more inefficient than roaming. It's such a complicated architecture that makes absolutely no sense. And the only reason why it's like that, it's political culture and because humans are in the middle. However, blockchain finds its way to solve this problem by bringing that layer of decentralization and trustless environment, and with the power of consensus and smart contracts, you can actually release payments only when you have achieved your goal, and that goal can be achieved at service level, or delivery of a service. So I actually think that we can solve that problem very, very easily. And that's our pitch to businesses, to migrate to decentralization instead of centralized OSS, BSS layers. But I'm sure, Michael, you can have more insights on the customer end perspective, maybe.
Yeah, I love it. I love like blockchain's role is really in the BSS OSS part of the value chain, which makes a lot of sense to me as well, or at least of the tech stack. What just to come back, what was the phrasing of the question again, one more time, just so it's fresh in my head?
The question was, how does DePIN compare to centralized systems in terms of hiding costs or unexpected expenses? In a
Okay.
sense,
Well,
more transparent. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll do a little anecdote because this is like very much my old area. So long before I was at Hotspotty, I worked in critical infrastructure for many years related to mainly telecom, but also electricity and coffee and agriculture and a whole bunch of other things. So like everything from farming to electricity distribution to also petroleum movement and like all kinds of stuff like that. But it was primarily from the point of view of field service operations. So the actual like scheduling and dispatching of people, like their time on site, how to optimize it, how to cut costs, also security, like physical security, how to reduce theft. It was all about like operational optimization and basically cutting OpEx, like operational expenditure. And so telecom was one of the main industries we worked in. And what was funny is that in one of the companies I was in, we specifically sold security systems, and most of them were access control systems. So it was basically like smart locks. And you wouldn't think about it, but let's just say it's a macro cell site. So a macro cell site is like, a big base station. This is like, your typical cell tower that you see like coming up like, 18 meters high off the ground with a fence around it and like doors, and you have a shelter and you have all kinds of infrastructure on the site. Um, the thing is, like, especially in the developing world where incomes are a bit lower, these are actually highly prone to theft because you have backup battery systems with a whole bunch of like basically a giant rack of batteries. You can steal those batteries. You can steal copper cable. They often have a fuel tank, and then you can actually siphon fuel from the fuel tank. So you have to secure it. So basically, people put a bunch of little padlocks and stuff all over these devices and like a door with a typical lock. But the issue is people arrive on site, and the people that are arriving on the site to do work, like maintenance work, like really critical work, like for instance, if the site goes down, these are usually subcontractors. And so they're like outsourced people. And those subcontractors sometimes have their own subcontractors. So you get this crazy chain of subcontractors. They go to site. Sometimes they don't have the right key, or they simply lose the key during their work, like they drop it or something. And then they either can't lock the site or they can't get into the site. And so sometimes they cut the fence, they take like one of those big bolt cutters and they cut the padlock, they do all this crazy stuff. And then you end up with a site that you can't lock or a site that you just can't get into. And then you're stuck for like 2 days and the site is down. And then the regulator comes in and penalizes you like sometimes 20, 50, $60,000 for that site being down, just because of the lock. So we were selling these like multi-million-dollar locking solutions just to avoid these problems. So you could like automate the process, you could get a code to your phone, like, and then you could deactivate the code so the guy couldn't get back in afterwards. Like, so like the point of my story is like even these stupid things you would never think about, like a padlock, could end up costing tens of thousands of dollars for one site. And then if you have a large network, like let's say you're like, I don't know, AT&T in the US, you might have like 60,000 of these sites or 100,000 of these sites. So you can just imagine the cost structure goes through the roof. You could literally be losing tens of $1 millions a year because of locks. So where DePIN comes in to innovate this is like all of that is now gone. Because Maria mentioned tower companies before. Like a tower company is essentially a real estate company. They're not technical at all. They just buy land and then they lease space on the land. Well, they build a cell tower and then they lease space on the cell tower to different mobile network operators. And their goal is just to get as many people on that cell tower as possible so they can put as many radios as possible. But now you have the issue that multiple companies need to access the same infrastructure and make sure that like the Huawei guy from, I don't know, for Telefonica is not damaging the gear like that the Nokia guy works on for Vodafone or something. So you get all these issues, right? The beautiful thing is with DePIN is that if now that infrastructure is just like connected to someone's home, and it's just like the hotel itself actually owns the radios, then you don't have to worry about access control with the hotel. You don't have to worry about all these weird subcontractors going there. You don't have to worry about all the things with theft. You don't have any of these issues because if my radio goes down, I lose money. So it's in my interest to immediately go check on what happened. Do I need to replug it in? Did the power go out? Do I need to reset my router? Is it something else? I'm already incentivized to do it myself, and there's no other middlemen involved, right? So now you've suddenly like streamlined all of the security. It's basically gone. All of the complexity around scheduling and dispatching and trucks and, what if your tire popped and all of these issues is basically gone. Of course, this opens up new problems because like, what if I'm not home for 2 weeks and my radio goes down? Like there's other problems, of course. But if you have a redundant network where you have excess capacity, then even if like I have an issue in my house, I have a neighbor down the street and you can use his radio. So DePIN becomes very interesting because it removes all of those weird hidden costs around like field service management, security, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll stop there, but that's just like one of those hidden costs that I think people forget to take into account.
Thank you so much for sharing. Actually, I think you guys are one of the best speakers that I ever had. You are making my life so much easier as a moderator. So yeah, so in order to wrap up, since we are almost here for 1 hour, and thank you so much once again for being here and to share your knowledge with the community. So Maria, where can people learn more about Everlabs and reach out to you in case if they want to explore any type of collaboration or synergies? And the same for you, Michael, just to wrap up, to make sure that the rest of the audience, they understand that this is an open dialogue, right? I mean, the reason why we say yes to all of these X spaces is actually because we are in a space and in a moment where it's crucial for us to collaborate, right? And it's actually like the value and the essence of Web3. It's all about collaboration and exploring different synergies together. So please share with the community what they can expect from you and how they can reach out and establish some connection.
Yeah, so following us, all your traditional channels, I guess, like Twitter, LinkedIn, everything that we communicate all of our progress there. I guess on LinkedIn, we're a bit more telco focused, where we talk more about orchestration and telco cloud and all that geeky stuff. And Twitter is where we speak the language of the community, and we share our successes and keep everyone updated of our partnerships. If anyone wants to reach out to us because you think what we do is cool and you want to work together, just drop us a message on Twitter, and Raman, our community manager, will definitely be in touch. And also we have a Telegram channel which is full of really cool people and very healthy conversation. I'm very proud of that. So you can also join us there and keep up with all the news. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and then yeah, for us, I mean, same thing, right? We have a DePIN Hub Telegram group. I think it's just at DePIN Hub, I believe. So we have like 2,200 plus people in there. It's pretty active. So feel free to join. And then obviously our website is deepinhub.io. And again, the conference that we just did, which was really fun. It was like we had 2,500 attendees, 38 speakers. We played music, we had visuals, there was like a live art rendition in the background. There was all kinds of cool stuff happening. And it was, you'll learn a ton about, 38 really cool DePIN projects. That's revolution.deepinhub.io. So feel free to go there. The summit's over, but we're making it all a downloadable course that you can still watch. So it doesn't mean that you really missed it. And then, yeah, I mean, my Twitter is, what is my Twitter? So then I am, SOTHANIAM. I'm not very active on Twitter, but,
Just for
feel free
your
to follow me.
reference, just for your reference, you are talking using your personal Twitter account.
Oh yeah, this one. Yeah, that would be the one, Sarah. As you can see, I'm not. I usually do all of my tweeting from Hotspotty's official account. I'm not very active on my personal one, but this is my personal one, so you can show me some love and follow me. Maybe I'll build a following someday. But you can also go to @Hotspotty. So Hotspotty is our official Twitter account.
I just followed you, Michael. You have one more follower.
Thank you.
I'm the
I
same.
appreciate.
By the way, I'm the same. I'm like literally probably just have Twitter so I can join spaces. But I get comments from marketing like you should post more. Um, and probably I'll get to that. One thing is that we are going to be part of Mobile World Congress in Las Vegas. I'll be there. So if anyone in the community is going to be there, let us know. And we're also going to be part of a bunch of Web3 events coming up in the few months. So we're going to be announcing those as and when they come. But looking forward to meeting people in real life in conferences that we attend.
That's fantastic. Okay, Thank you so much, everyone. Excited to meet you all in real life because, as Maria mentioned, I'm pretty sure we are going to come across eventually, right? Especially Singapore, then Thailand. We're also organizing a side event in Lisbon together with Michael. So I guess you are going to keep hearing a lot from us. And yeah, once again, thank you so much for being here. And thank you, our amazing speakers.
Thank you, Impossible Cloud Network. And yeah, you guys got to check out our event. Come to Lisbon for Web Summit. It'll be cool.
Yeah.
And thank you, Maria.
Thank you, guys. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.